Island has always been associated with peaceful rural landscapes, colorful fall leaves, and rows of well-kept colonial-style wooden homes. But behind that seemingly perfect image, Vermont holds a quiet side rarely exposed to travelers. Deep inside the dense forests of the Green Mountains and the cold northern borderlands, there are traces of settlements slowly losing their pulse. Some have completely died and been swallowed by nature, while others now stand on the edge of extreme population crisis and structural economic stagnation. Let's trace 15 locations in Vermont that record the story of mass settlement extinction, from ghost towns left as ruins to modern small towns now struggling to preserve their existence before disappearing completely from the administrative map. Ever heard of Glastenbury? Hidden in southern Bennington County, Glastenbury holds a reputation as Vermont's most famous and mysterious ghost town. In the second half of the 19th century, this place was a busy center of logging and charcoal production, home to hundreds of mine workers and their families. But once the forest vegetation was stripped away for industry, the town was abandoned almost entirely, leaving behind a wooden railroad slowly rotting away. Interestingly, Glastenbury is not only empty because of economics, but also because it sits in the middle of the Bennington Triangle, a mysterious area where several people disappeared without explanation between 1945 and 1950. Modern census records consistently show the permanent population here in the single digits, making it a vast empty space where nature has fully reclaimed what humans once built. Leaving the mystery of Glastenbury, we move north toward Rutland County, where we find the remains of West Castleton, now absorbed into Basin State Park. This ghost town has a crisis story rooted in the massive slate industry of the 19th century, when hundreds of Italian immigrants came to work in hillside quarries. Commercial life here collapsed completely after major labor strikes and a sharp post-war drop in global demand for slate. Walking its forest trails today, all that remains are cracked commercial foundations, ruins of old processing mills, and moss-covered stone walls buried under wild brush. Its population decline happened so quickly, turning a crowded immigrant settlement into a silent gray ruin complex beside the lake. If West Castleton died because the slate industry collapsed, this ghost town vanished through a different disaster. Located in Caledonia County, Greenbanks Hollow is an exception because it died in a single night. In the 1880s, this area was a highly self-sufficient wool manufacturing center, complete with a multi-story textile mill, general store, post office, and neatly arranged worker homes. Disaster came in 1885, when a massive fire consumed the entire industrial complex and nearby residential area, leaving almost nothing behind. Because the owners lacked enough money to rebuild the burned infrastructure, residents immediately began a mass exodus to find work in other towns. What remains today is only a rebuilt historic covered bridge and large limestone foundations standing silently beside a small stream. From the ash-filled ruins left by that great fire, our path now moves deep into Washington County, where Ricker Basin is located. This place offers a deeply melancholy story of how a local farming community finally surrendered to harsh natural conditions. The community was founded by the Ricker family in the 19th century, as they tried to survive by farming on steep mountain slopes and relying on a small-scale timber industry. The geographic hardship was made worse by the Great Vermont Flood of 1927, which destroyed key roads and bridges, cutting this area off from the outside world. When the state government decided to buy the surrounding land to build a flood control dam, the last residents were forced to pack their belongings and leave. In the dense forest today, you can still find remains of homes, farming tools, a quiet family cemetery, and wooden house foundations slowly sinking into the soil. Before we move on to inhabited towns now in crisis, there is one more complete ghost town whose fate is locked in Windham County. This place is Somerset, an area that clearly shows how a town can be legally erased by the government because no residents remain. Somerset was once one of the most productive logging towns in the southern mountains, supported by a special timber railroad that cut through the hills. When the commercial timber supply ran out in the early 20th century, the town suffered a fatal population decline until no residents were left to fill local government positions. Because of that structural vacancy, Vermont officially dissolved Somerset's town status in 1937. Today, the landscape is dominated by the wide surface of Somerset Reservoir and the heavy silence of the National Forest, with not a single store or public facility standing. After seeing places already completely dead and wrapped in history, we now move to the second phase, active towns struggling on the edge of extinction. We begin with Granby, a remote area in the Northeast Kingdom. Granby is one of the least populated inhabited towns in all of Vermont, with its daily population often sitting below 100 people based on periodic census data. Yes, this town has no gas station, no grocery store, and not a single traffic light along its quiet roads. Younger generations almost always choose to leave as soon as they are old enough to work. Daily life in Granby today is defined by empty, unpaved roads where you can drive for miles without passing another vehicle, creating the impression of a town counting down the time before it becomes truly empty. Separated from Granby only by stretches of dense forest, its nearby neighbor is also in a condition that is just as critical. Welcome to Victory, a town facing a similar fate because of its extreme geographic isolation inside state forest land. The crisis here is reflected not only in its severe population decline, but also in the instability of its local government, which often struggles with vacant positions because of the shortage of available people. With a very limited adult population, the town has repeatedly had trouble simply choosing town hall officers or official administrative representatives. Visually, Victory offers the sight of rural New England wooden homes placed very far apart from one another, tucked between tall enclosed trees. The absence of commercial economic activity makes Victory feel haunting and deeply cut off from modern life. Still within Essex County, the crisis does not only affect tiny settlements in the forest, but also former transit centers that were once impressive. This is clearly seen in Island Pond, the main village in the town of Brighton. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, Island Pond was a vital international railroad transit post, connecting logistics routes between Montreal in Canada and the port of Portland in Maine. When that railroad route closed and rail operations became more mechanized, the town was thrown into a long-term economic crisis. Life in Island Pond today centers around a large old train station that looks far too grand for a town now so quiet. Along its downtown, you can find rows of old shop buildings with tired wooden facades, where many businesses have shut down because of declining purchasing power and winter isolation that freezes regional activity. Following the cold route farther through Essex County, the quiet roads bring us to another small town with a critically low population. Standing along the banks of the Connecticut River, Brunswick holds a unique chapter of crisis centered on a historic site known as Brunswick Springs. At that spring site, there once stood a grand 19th century resort hotel complex, believed to carry a local curse because the hotel burned down 4 times in a row every time it was rebuilt by different investors. Those repeated mysterious disasters eventually made business owners give up, leaving Brunswick without any strong industrial or tourism base. Brunswick today is extremely quiet, marked by the moss-covered concrete foundations of that cursed hotel beside the water, along with rows of residents' homes that seem almost empty of daily life. From the frozen eastern border region, we jump far down to the southern edge of Vermont, directly along the Massachusetts line. Here, we arrive in Reedsboro, a town that offers a case study in the collapse of local manufacturing. This small town once enjoyed a stable period of prosperity thanks to a large wooden chair factory and pulp processing facilities operating along the river. After those factory complexes closed permanently because of shifts in the manufacturing market, Reedsboro was quickly hit by economic stagnation, clearly visible in its town infrastructure. Although the Independence Day parade is still held regularly, the look of Reedsboro remains relevant for showing signs of a town in crisis. From giant brick factory buildings with broken windows left empty, to old dam structures beginning to rust, to rows of worker homes with paint peeling under harsh weather and little intensive upkeep from their owners. If Reedsboro was hit by the closure of its chair factory, this town in Addison County was damaged by cracks in its agricultural foundation. That place is Starksboro, which holds the story of the collapse of the family dairy farming industry. For more than a century, dairy farming was the financial lifeline and social identity of the people of Starksboro. But economic pressure from large dairy corporations has caused dozens of family farms in this town to fall one by one in recent decades. Life today moves slowly, with the economic burden shifting toward commuting to other towns. Visually, the signs of decline in Starksboro are clear along its roadsides, where you can often find historic New England wooden barns leaning to one side and left to decay as silent witnesses to a lost farming glory. The rural economic crisis seen in Starksboro reaches even the regional government center in the Northeast. Although it holds an important administrative status as a county seat, Guildhall is known as one of the quietest county seats in the United States. The decline of Guildhall's urban function has happened slowly but consistently over the past century, as public services and retail businesses gradually moved to other, more strategic areas. A unique fact about Guildhall is its town layout, with a central green surrounded by a historic courthouse, an old library, and an ancient town hall, all still standing firmly, but almost always empty of human activity. The atmosphere in Guildhall today feels as if you are stepping into an open-air museum frozen in the past, where time has stopped and the younger population left long ago, leaving history behind. Leaving the silence of Guildhall, we move west toward Orleans County to see the damaging legacy of extractive industry. We arrive in Lowell, a town whose fate was once shaped by asbestos mining on Mount Belvedere. During its years of operation, the asbestos mine was the main source of jobs, supporting hundreds of families in Lowell. But when the health dangers of asbestos became widely known and strict regulations were introduced, the mine was permanently closed, leaving deep environmental and economic scars on the town. Some signs of the crisis in Lowell today can be seen in the abandoned giant mine facilities on the mountainside, with rusting iron towers and contaminated land. The town center itself now struggles against economic stagnation, marked by very few new businesses and several commercial buildings on the main road with windows boarded up. From the abandoned asbestos mine slopes, the northern route brings us right to the international border between the United States and Canada. At the end of this road sits Norton, a clear portrait of a border town slowly becoming isolated from the main flow of the national economy. In the past, Norton grew because of busy customs activity and several regional logging operations. As border regulations changed in the modern era and the timber industry shut down, Norton quickly lost its economic pull. The most painful sign of crisis for the local community was the closing of its only elementary school because the number of students kept falling below the minimum limit. This created a domino effect that pushed the remaining young families in Norton to move elsewhere, leaving residential districts dominated by empty homes seized by financial institutions. Our journey finally reaches the far northeastern edge of Vermont, directly bordering both Canada and New Hampshire. Here lies Canaan, the final town completing this regional chain of crisis caused by the closure of a giant paper industry just across the river in New Hampshire, which for decades had supported the livelihoods of most Canaan workers. The impact of that regional manufacturing shutdown was highly destructive for Canaan, triggering rising unemployment and a sharp drop in local property values. Walking through Canaan's residential areas today reveals neglected yards, foreclosure notices posted in several properties, and rows of grocery stores along the main road with doors permanently locked because there are no longer enough customers. Tracing these 15 towns in Vermont gives us a deeper understanding that the beauty of rural landscapes often hides major structural vulnerability to changing times. Whether it is a 19th century ghost town, now fully reclaimed by the dense forests of the Green Mountains, or a modern small town fighting population crisis and the fall of a single industry, each one records a human struggle lost against global economic shifts. In the end, the silence hanging over the roads in these places is not merely a sign of physical decay. It is also a reflective reminder of how a community can slowly fade and lose its voice when the foundation of its life can no longer carry the weight of a changing era.